Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for holding this hearing, and thank you to our witnesses. And as we think about veterans' benefits and think about especially the jurisdiction of the subcommittee and economic opportunity, I think of the statistic that we're confronted with in Congress, that there are more job openings in America today than there are unemployed Americans. And I love what you said, Ms. Burgess, about veterans being assets. They most certainly are, and in my experience in meeting veterans in the 6th Congressional District, especially those who have recently separated from their active duty, these are the best and brightest our country has to offer. They most certainly are assets because they exhibit qualities of teamwork, they exhibit qualities of leadership, of service to a cause greater than themselves. These are exactly the qualities that employers are desperate for right now in this country. So it's very, very important that we get this right and we continue to offer our veterans with greater opportunities to meet that need in the labor market. I did want to ask Mrs. Devlin a question about the STEM scholarships issue. The draft legislation that we shared with you, we appreciate your feedback in improving or making some suggestions on how we can improve the legislation. My district does boast a number of colleges and universities that offer STEM degrees as well as a large veteran population. So I look forward to introducing an updated version of this draft legislation with Chairman Levin in the coming days. Ms. Devlin, in your testimony, you listed a number of provisions in the draft legislation that may expand the Rogers STEM Scholarship beyond its original intent, and so possibly that draft was an overcorrection to fix the too narrow credit hour requirement currently in law. Would the VA support a narrowly tailored fix to the Rogers Scholarship that only removes the hard to obtain 128 credit hour requirement and instead replace it with the much more common 120 semester credit hour requirement?
We would definitely support an amendment that wouldn't be quite as restricted or as open as it changed. I think the 120 hours, we would want to go back and do some research on that to see if that's the right cutoff, but we would definitely want to work with you on that. We also would want to take a look at the 2-year funding and ensure that the funding is awarded by school year and not by fiscal year, because that's how the programs operate at colleges and universities. Okay,
well, thanks for your perspective on that. I mean, if we made those corrections, have you considered an estimate of how many more veterans in STEM programs would be able to take advantage of the scholarship?
We think it'll open it up much more. We haven't had any start because it effectively goes into place in August, but it's definitely very restricted right now with the 128 credit hours. We're not sure if veterans will be able to participate with that restriction in place. Well,
as I was alluding to before, there's a lot of demand for skilled workers, and especially in the STEM areas where we see a deficiency in the labor market. Ms. Haycock, Mr. Murray, and Mr. Kamen, a goal of this subcommittee is to produce legislation that sets up our service members for success in their transition to civilian life. The post-9/11 GI Bill is critical in allowing our veterans to get the education they've earned. In your work with veterans, what programs or fields of study are you seeing veterans trend toward using their post-9/11 GI Bill?
So, sir, there was a very informative study done by our friends at Student Veterans of America called the INVEST study that showed that the majority were seeking business degrees. The second was STEM. So what we're seeing is veterans are transitioning, or service members are transitioning out, and they're not using their skills in the military. They're looking to do something entirely different. The military, by and large, does not teach business. It teaches much different skills. So getting out and doing something, wholly different is something we really support.
Yes, and I would echo Pat's mention of our friends at Student Veterans of America and their study INVEST, which also showed that veterans are graduating at a higher rate than their cohorts and cohort non-traditional students. So we're seeing them carry this legacy of success from the World War II generation onward that we're proving, and really fundamentally changing the idea of a benefit to match what we've always mythologized as investment. That's genuinely the case here, where we're seeing the taxpayer money is being paid back by what they're giving to the country.
And I would like to also add that in the survivor space, we're seeing a huge uptick in survivors pursuing degrees in the mental health space. The number one population or number two population for loss we've seen this year is actually suicides. So seeing the large numbers there, so many of the families who lost a loved one to suicide then want to go in and work in suicide prevention and mental health and counseling, the things that they felt their loved ones would have benefited from.
Thanks for your great work with TAPS. Thanks. Yield back.